Hybe is angry, at least that's the impression, when news of Taehyung and Jungkook's plan, conceived without the knowledge of management, starts to surface. It is not anger that is expressed through official statements, but tension that is felt from a change of attitude, from a sudden silence of meeting, from a rhythm that is suddenly tightened. In an industry that moves on a precision schedule, every step out of line often sparks a reaction. And this time, those two big names are right at the center of the vortex. This story does not explode with a single incident. It emerges from the small pieces. Abrupt meetings, readjusted agendas, decisions that feel more cautious than usual. Behind the scenes, there are whispers that Taehyung and Jungkook have designed something independently, something not listed in the official calendar, not through the usual channels. For management as big as Hybe, this kind of surprise is not just a matter of control, but of direction. Taehyung and Jungkook are not random names. Their every move brings impact. Every decision resonates far beyond the creative space. When two figures of such magnitude of influence move without formal coordination, it is natural for an internal alarm to go off. Not solely because of distrust, but because of the great responsibility that is born together towards the team, towards a project, towards the ecosystem built over the years. However, on the other hand, there's a reason why the plan was not shared in the first place. Taehyung and Jungkook are in the reflective phase. They're looking for a space to think clearly, to devise steps that are true to themselves. Japan became a silent backdrop for the process, away from the spotlight, away from the pressure of instant decisions. In such silence, ideas are tidied up, values are harmonized, and understanding is established without noise. When the news reached Hybe, the reaction that emerged was cold and measured. No public statements, no open drama. But that is precisely what makes many people read the situation as angry. In the corporate world, anger often comes as a tightening of procedures, as a reminder of limits, as a reaffirmation of roles. This is not an explosion of emotions, but rather a friction of interest that Hybe stands between two great mandates: protecting the artist's creative freedom and ensuring long-term stability. When plans are drawn up outside the system, those two mandates collide. On the one hand, Taehyung and Jungkook are entitled to creative space. On the other hand, management is responsible for the consequences. Tension arises not because one side is right and the other is wrong, but rather because both move from different logics. For Taehyung, this plan feels personal, a continuation of the process of searching for meaning that he's been going through lately. For Jungkook, it's an effort to refocus, to put energy into what he truly believes. They're not trying to fight the system. They're trying to understand themselves. But good intentions do not always go hand in hand with established mechanisms that in the midst of this attraction, fans catch different shades. Some are worried, some are angry, some choose to wait. Many armies see it as a phase of maturation, when the artist begins to take greater ownership of the direction of his life. But there are also those who understand Hybe's position, that freedom without coordination can lead to unnecessary risks. What makes this situation even more interesting is the way all parties chose to remain silent. No debate, no clarificación. Strategic silence. Silence that saves negotiations. In that silence, the possibilities are wide open. Will the plans be adjusted? Will there be a compromise? Or is it that a new format is born that bridges freedom and structure? History shows that moments like this often become turning points. Tensions forced all parties to sit together, realigning expectations. Hybe, with her long experience, knows that big talents need space. Taehyung and Jungkook, with growing maturity, know that space must be accompanied by responsibility. The meeting of these two consciousnesses is rarely smooth, but often results in progress. If it is true that Hybe is angry, the anger does not seem to be a complete rejection, but rather a signal to smooth the path. Boundaries need to be defined so that freedom does not turn into chaos. At the same time, the system needs to be flexible so that creativity does not suffocate. Between those two extremes, solutions are usually born that, in the end, Taehyung and Jungkook's plan, whatever it takes, has sparked an important conversation about who is in control, about how decisions are made, about personal space within large structures. These conversations may not be seen publicly today, but the impact will be felt slowly in the next steps. And perhaps when the time is right, this story will be remembered not as a conflict, but as a phase of adjustment. The phase when tensions are tested, trust is negotiated, and direction is clarified. Because in an industry this big, anger isn't always the end of the story. Often, it's the beginning of a new set of rules. More mature, more honest, and more balanced. The tension that emerged slowly formed a new atmosphere behind the scenes. Not an atmosphere of panic, but of increased caution. Every communication feels more structured. Every decision is prompted through a thicker layer of consent. For some, this looks like a step back. But for the management, this is a way to ensure that there are no gaps that could lead to unforeseen consequences. In a system as big as Hybe, stability isn't just a goal. It's a foundation done on Taehyung and Jungkook's side. The response wasn't explosive. There is no open defense, no confrontational attitude. Both of them, on the contrary, seem to be more and more calm, as if understanding that this phase requires patience. They know a good plan must not only be ideologically strong, but also must be able to stand within the existing structure. Their silence is not a sign of surrender, but a sign of waiting for the right moment to explain with language that is acceptable to all parties. Some sources mention an intense internal dialogue, not a hard debate, but rather an exchange of points of view. Hybe wants certainty, purpose, risk, impact. Taehyung and Jungkook carry a vision, creative honesty, emotional sustainability, and long-term direction. At the same table, these two languages must be translated into each other. And like most important negotiations, the process is time-consuming. Interestingly, this tension actually led to a more pronounced sense of mutual respect. The management realized that these two artists did not move thoughtlessly. Meanwhile, Taehyung and Jungkook understand that Hybe's concern is not about limiting, but protecting. When these two interests are mutually recognized, a compromise space begins to open up, albeit slowly. For the army, this phase feels like holding your breath. Many read each signal, trying to understand the direction of the wind. But the more time goes by, the more it becomes noticeable that there are no large cracks. There's a process of adjustment, a process that is often not dramatic on the surface, but decisive behind it. More mature fans chose to wait, believing that the best results were born from dialogues, not from public pressure. There's also a new realization coming to the fore, that artists at Taehyung and Jungkook's level have entered a phase where their roles are evolving. From just an executor to a creative partner, this change of role is almost always accompanied by friction, not because of a conflict of interest, but because the definition of responsibility has shifted. Who decides what, and to what extent? Hybe, by its reputation, is known to be adaptable. Many believe that this tension will give birth to more flexible work formats, maybe with a new communication channel, maybe with a more structured but not rigid creative space. Taehyung and Jungkook, on the other hand, are likely to bring their plans with a clearer framework, not to diminish the essence, but rather to strengthen it. Over time, the outrage that the public was talking about began to appear as a misunderstanding magnified by silence. Because in practice, what happens is prudence. And prudence is often mistaken for rejection. In fact, in this industry, caution is a rarely acknowledged love language, a way of making sure all parties can step up without falling. If there's a lesson from this phase, it is the importance of a harmonized rhythm. Creativity needs space, structure needs clarity. When the two meet without dialogue, friction is inevitable. But when dialogue awakens, friction can turn into encouragement.